morning, juniors. How are you? I hope you're having a great day. I hope you had a good week. Another week's gone, right? I hope you were very productive. I hope that everything you needed to accomplish, you accomplished. It is always a nice relief that at the end of a week, when you can look back on everything that you did, school-wise, for your family, home, whatever, for your pets, whatever. And you can look back and say, yeah, I really got a lot accomplished. That's very, very comforting. At least it is for me. Okay? All right. So this week, we are talking about promises. You know, this whole quarter, every week has been something different. We really haven't had the same story, different parts of the same story and things like that. And so this week is the same. We have a new story, not new. You already know the story, right? But sometimes this particular story isn't stressed as much as other parts of the story. We're talking about David before he was King David. He had already gone. We learn, the whole Goliath story. He had gone to feed the brothers. He had gone before King Saul. And King Saul liked David for a while. Right? But then the more fame and glory King David got, Saul began to be jealous, right? So our memory verse today, our Bible verse, is 2 Samuel 20, verse 42. And it says, Then Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, since we both have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, May the Lord be between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants, forever. So he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Okay? So the promise that Jonathan and David made to each other was after Jonathan had seen that how his father, King Saul, hated David, right? And so it really surprised Jonathan, and it broke his heart. But he realized that he realized that David was doing what God wanted him to do, and he loved David like a brother. They were the very best of friends. So David and Jonathan made a promise to each other that they were going to take care of each other, but not only each other, but their descendants. Do you know what descendant means? Their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. Okay? Now, Jonathan could not have known what the future was going to hold, right? He had no idea. We know how the story goes, but Jonathan had no idea what was going to happen to David and David's family. He had no idea. Jonathan had no idea what was going to happen to his family, right? But they made this promise to each other, and David kept his promise, and Jonathan kept his promise, okay? So, our story starts in 1 Samuel 20, and this section of the Bible in mine says Jonathan's loyalty to David. He was loyal to David, okay? Again, David had gone before King Saul. King Saul was very happy with David, and then David began to win the battles, and people began chanting his name, and King Saul got a little jealous, and then he got more jealous, and then he got even more jealous. And so our story begins, David tells Jonathan, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan says, no, he's not. No. Jonathan said to him, by no means, you shall not die. Indeed, my father will do nothing, either great nor small, without telling me. Why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. So Jonathan is telling David, my dad is not trying to kill you. If my dad was trying to kill you, I would know that. My dad tells me everything, right? Because think about it. If Saul was the king, then he was assuming that his son Jonathan would be the king. So he was training him, okay? Then David took an oath and said, your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes, and has said, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. So David is telling Jonathan, I promise you, your father is trying to kill me. And Jonathan just doesn't understand, but he says, David, you've never lied to me. You never made up a story. So let's come up with a plan. So they come up with a plan. And the plan is that David will not appear at King Saul's dinner table for 3 days. Okay? And depending on how King Saul reacts, will let Jonathan know how King Saul really feels. Okay? So the first day kind of goes along. King Saul doesn't say anything about David not being there. The second day, King Saul says, where's the son of Jesse? Doesn't even call him by his name. Says the son of Jesse. And Jonathan says, oh, you know what, Dad? I totally forgot. He needed to go to Bethlehem to do some to meet with his family and things like this, and I told him it was just fine and for him to hurry back when he could come back. That was the test. Jonathan wanted to see how his dad reacted. Well, King Saul lost his mind. He was furious. He said, we're going to go get David. We're going to find David. How dare he leave without telling me, without asking my permission? And so Jonathan saw then that David really had been telling the truth. David had never lied to Jonathan, and Jonathan had no reason to doubt David, but he's like, this is my dad and this is my best friend. Surely my dad is not trying to kill my best friend. But he found out he was, right? So he was so upset that Jonathan left the supper and he didn't eat anything. He was so upset. Well, then this comes the next part of the story. Jonathan and David had said, here's the test. David, it's not safe for you to come back. So depending on how King Saul acts, I'll tell you if it's okay for you to come back or not. But you can't come all the way back because King Saul is out looking for you. So I'm going to take a young boy out, and we're going to be shooting arrows. And depending on what I tell the young boy about where the arrows is, that'll let you know if it's safe for you to come back or if you need to leave. And so they had already arranged all this, that they had made this promise to each other. They had the test, and then how David was going to find out the results of the test. Okay? So Jonathan gives his dad the test, and King Saul fails, right? He gets very angry that David is gone. So on the third day, that was part of their deal. And on the third day, I'm going to shoot 3 arrows. Okay? So here we go. I'm looking at the particular verse. I totally forgot. When Jonathan is asking King Saul, wait, why couldn't David just go to his family? King Saul was so angry, he threw a spear at Jonathan. Jonathan knew the spear wasn't really for him, that it was really for David. But wow, he threw a spear at his own child. So Jonathan knew for a fact that King Saul was very angry. So it was in the morning. We're on verse 35. So it was on the morning that Jonathan went out to the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad was with him. A little boy, a helper. And he said to his lad, now run and find the arrows which I shoot. As the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the lad had come to the place where the arrow was, which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried out after the lad and said, is the arrow not beyond you? And Jonathan cried out after the lad, make haste, hurry, do not delay. So Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came back to his master. That was part of the plan. If it was okay for David to come back, then Jonathan would have told the lad, the arrows are before you. Come back this way. So David knew it would be okay to come back. But if Jonathan said to the lad that was getting the arrows, The arrows are beyond you. That means go away. And Jonathan even said, make haste, hurry, do not delay. Was he really talking to the lad? No, he was really talking to David, meaning hurry up and get out of here. Go quickly, okay? Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the lad and said to him, go ahead and take these back to the city, because Jonathan knew that David was still there. As soon as the lad had gone, David arose from the place toward the south, and he fell on the ground and bowed 3 times. They kissed each other and they wept, but David more so. David bowed before Jonathan because he had just saved David's life, right? He was a prince, but his best friend had just saved his life. That way, David didn't even have to worry about trying to come back. Was it safe? Was it not safe, right? He knew it was not safe. He knew he could not go back. And then Jonathan said to David, go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, may the Lord be between you and me, between your descendants and my descendants forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. So David gets up and leaves. Jonathan goes back to where his dad is, because it would have been weird for Jonathan to have disappeared from the city, right? His dad, King Saul, would have been expecting him. And so David leaves. Do they ever meet each other again? But you know, that part really doesn't matter, does it? They had made this promise to each other. They had made this promise. And they keep the promise. Some of you might know how David keeps the promise, right? But they both keep the promise. This story is such a good story for many reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is, does God always keep his promises? He does, doesn't he? Right? He's promised he'll come back and get us. He didn't say when, but he said he'll come back and get us, right? And we're living through some stressful times, but we have the hope and the knowledge that any day Jesus could return in the clouds, right? God has never made a promise and then didn't keep it. Just like David and Jonathan knew that they were going to keep each other's promise, we know God will keep his promises. We know it's just a matter of time. It could be tomorrow. It could be next week. It could be next year. It could be 50 years from now. We don't know, do we? But that's why we're ready every day. And God always keeps his promises. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope that any promises that you make, you're able to keep. Okay? Have a great day. Bye.